a story of redemption that will touch your heart. In the New Mexico desert, a millionaire abandons his newborn daughter, but fate intervenes in an unexpected way. A German shepherd and a compassionate rancher change the course of this journey, unleashing a series of events that will transform lives forever. Prepare for an emotional roller coaster of regret, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Subscribe, leave a like, and comment where you're watching this incredible saga of overcoming challenges. What could make a man abandon his own daughter in the middle of the desert? What inner demons inhabit the soul of someone who buries a life, freshly arrived in the world under the scorching New Mexico sand? This is a story about the choices that define us and the second chances that life rarely offers. Night falls over the New Mexico desert. The sky, previously painted orange and red, now yields to the black cloak dotted with thousands of stars. The silence is almost palpable, broken only by the whistle of the wind dancing among the cacti and withered bushes. In this seemingly God-forsaken vastness, a luxury car slowly makes its way down a dirt road, its headlights cutting through the darkness like two restless eyes. Behind the wheel is Edward Blackwood, 45, a man whose fortune is only comparable to the emptiness he carries in his chest. His angular face, always impeccably shaved, is now covered by a 3-day beard. His eyes, normally cold and calculating, reveal an unusual restlessness. In the back seat, a small bundle emits almost imperceptible sounds. Edward parks the car in an isolated spot and turns off the engine. For a moment, he remains motionless, as if fighting an internal battle. His hands grip the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turn white. Finally, he turns to the back seat and picks up the bundle. A small hand emerges from the covers, so fragile, so vulnerable, so inconvenient. "I can't do this," he murmurs to himself. But soon his expression hardens. "No, I have to do this." With determined steps, he walks away from the car, the bundle in his arms. With each step, he feels the weight increase, not from the physical load, but from the weight of the decision he has made. The baby, as if sensing what is to come, remains strangely silent. Edward stops in front of a small depression in the ground. He places the bundle on the ground and begins to dig with his hands. The sand, still warm from the scorching day, trickles through his fingers. He digs with mechanical determination, like someone trying to bury not just an unwanted burden, but also his own conscience. The hole is not deep, just enough to accommodate the small wooden box that Edward retrieves from the trunk. Inside it, he lines a space with soft blankets before placing the baby. The child, a girl just 3 weeks old, looks at him with eyes of a deep blue that seem to pierce his soul. The same eyes as her mother, Eleanor, who left this world bringing her into it. "You should never have been born," Edward whispers, but his voice trembles. "Your mother would be alive if it weren't for you." For an instant, a flicker of tenderness crosses his face as he sees the tiny hand grasp his finger. But he quickly pulls away, closing the lid of the box, leaving only small cracks for air to circulate. He places it in the hole and begins to cover it with sand, not completely, ensuring the lid remains partially visible. "Someone will find her," he tells himself, as an excuse, a justification for the unforgivable act. Some hiker, some tourist. We're only a few miles from the main road, but there is no one around, only the relentless wind that begins to blow harder, as if protesting against the crime it has just witnessed. Edward looks one last time at the small mound of sand and returns to the car. Hours pass. The temperature drops drastically, as it often does in the desert at night. Inside the box, the little one fights against the cold, her cries muffled by the wood and sand. Life, so fragile, so persistent, clings as best it can to this world that has already shown her its cruelest face. Miles away, on a small, isolated ranch, Diana Smith, 58, wakes up startled. A woman whose features are marked by the sun and hard, work brown eyes that have seen more sadness than joy, but that still hold a spark of hope. Beside her, Max, a sturdy golden and brown German shepherd, is restless, barking at the window. "What is it, Max? What do you see?" The dog doesn't answer, just keeps barking, growing more agitated. Diana gets up, putting a shawl over her shoulders. The house is simple but cozy, with dark wood furniture and handmade lace curtains. Photographs on the walls tell the story of a life dedicated to the land, but also of dreams never realized. There are no children in the photos, only Diana and her late husband, Michael, who died 5 years ago in a tractor accident. Quiet down, boy. It's probably just a coyote. But Max doesn't calm down. He goes to the door and scratches the wood, looking at Diana with an urgency she has never seen before. Reluctantly, she grabs a flashlight and opens the door. Immediately, the dog bolts into the darkness. "Max, come back here." Diana knows something is wrong. In 10 years, Max has never behaved like this. She grabs a thicker coat, puts on her worn boots, and goes out in search of her faithful companion, the flashlight precariously lighting the path ahead. Miles away, Edward can't sleep. Staying in a luxurious hotel in Santa Fe, he tosses and turns, bed, haunted by the baby's blue eyes. He tries to convince himself that he did the right thing. He is not emotionally capable of raising a child. Not after what happened with Eleanor. Not with the painful memories the girl would evoke. "It was for the best for everyone," he murmurs to himself in the empty room. "She'll find a family that really wants her." But the words sound hollow even to his own ears. He gets up abruptly, feeling cold sweat run down his back. Horrible images invade his mind. The small box, the sand, the cold night, wild animals. My God, what have I done? Meanwhile, Diana follows Max through the desert. The full moon lights the way, but the terrain is treacherous. She trips over rocks, scratches herself on thorny bushes, but keeps following the dog, who seems determined in his mysterious mission. "Max, please come back. It's dangerous." But the animal continues, as if driven by a greater force. Diana feels a tightness in her chest. Despite the fear, there is something about this night that feels predestined, as if each step were leading her to an appointment set by fate. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, Max stops. He is digging frantically at a small mound of... Diana approaches, breathless, and shines the flashlight. Her heart almost stops when she sees what appears to be the lid of a wooden box. "What is it, Max? What did you find?" The dog continues digging, and Diana kneels beside him, helping to remove the sand with her hands. The wood is cold to the touch, and she feels a chill that has nothing to do with the night's temperature. When she finally manages to open the lid, a small gasp escapes her lips. Wrapped in blankets that are already almost cold is a baby, pale and still. For a terrible moment, Diana thinks she arrived too late. But then the child moves slightly, her tiny lips trembling. Oh my God! Who would do such a thing? Without hesitation, Diana picks up the child in her arms, wrapping her in her own coat. The baby is freezing but alive. She presses her against her chest, trying to transfer her own warmth to the small body. "It's going to be okay, little. I found you. Max found you." The journey back to the ranch seems endless. Diana runs as fast as she can, Max at her side like a protective guardian. She whispers words of comfort to the child, promises of safety, silent vows that nothing bad will happen again. At the ranch, she heats water, improvises a bath, and gently washes the baby, who begins to regain color. It's a girl, maybe a few weeks old. There is no identification, no clue as to who she might be or who abandoned her so cruelly. Who could do this to you, little one? What kind of monster would be capable? The answer is on its way. Edward drives like a madman down the deserted road, his luxury car raising clouds of dust. Regret consumes him like a cancer, devouring any rationality he might still have. He needs to find the child. He needs to undo what he did. He needs to. But when he arrives at the spot, all he finds is an empty hole. The box is no longer there. Only paw prints and human footprints tell a silent story. Someone was there. Someone took his daughter. Edward falls to his knees in the sand. Tears he swore he would never shed again since Eleanor's death now run freely down his face. It is the price of belated repentance, the cost of realizing the monstrosity of his actions only when it is already too late. What have I done? My God, what have I done? At the ranch, Diana makes a decision. No matter who abandoned this, child. No matter what happens, she will not turn her over to the authorities. Not yet. Something inside her, a deep intuition, tells her that this little life was sent to fill the emptiness that has consumed her existence since Michael's death, and the sadness of never having had children. You'll stay with me, little one. At least for now, until we find out what happened, until we are sure you will be safe. She looks at Max, who hasn't left the baby's side for a second. Looks like we have a new member of the family, friend. Dawn brings new challenges. Diana knows she doesn't have everything a baby needs. She improvises diapers with old fabrics, feeds the little one warm milk sweetened with honey, a precarious but necessary substitute until she can go to town. The nearest town is a 40-minute drive away. Diana rarely goes there, preferring the solitude of her ranch. But now, she has no choice. She places the baby in a padded basket on the passenger seat of her, worn pickup truck and drives carefully along the winding roads. In the small grocery store, her purchases raise eyebrows. Diapers, bottles, formula, baby clothes. The saleswoman, a middle-aged woman with curious eyes, cannot contain her indiscretion. Didn't know you had grandchildren, Diana. Whose baby is it? Diana hesitates. She didn't plan a story. It's my niece's daughter. I'm taking care of her for a while my niece recovers from childbirth. She had complications. The lie comes out with surprising ease, but leaves a bitter taste in her mouth. Diana was never one to lie. However, something inside her knows that this lie, for now, is necessary. Oh, what a good heart you have. If you need help, let me know. My 3 are all grown up. I miss a baby in the house. Diana thanks her and leaves quickly, aware of the eyes that follow her. Small towns have long memories and sharp tongues. She knows her story will be questioned, investigated, dissected. But that's a problem for later. Now, her priority is the little one. Back at the ranch, she sets up a space for the baby in her own bedroom, an improvised crib from an old drawer, lined with soft blankets. As she prepares the bottle according to instructions, her thoughts wander to the uncertain future that awaits them. We need to give you a name, little one. The baby watches her with those impressive blue eyes, so intense, so deep that they seem to contain the sky itself. Diana remembers a story her grandmother used to tell about a warrior princess who survived great trials. I'll call you Emily, because you are my reborn hope, my second chance. Meanwhile, Edward Blackwood begins a frantic search. He hires private detectives, offers exorbitant rewards for any information about a baby found in the desert. But he is careful, never revealing that the child is his daughter, never mentioning that he was the one who abandoned her. He creates a story about an irresponsible nanny, a kidnapping, anything to divert attention from his guilt. Days turn into weeks. Diana and Emily establish a routine. The baby grows strong, seemingly without lasting effects from the terrible night in the desert. Max becomes her dedicated protector, sleeping beside the improvised crib, alert to any suspicious sound. Diana is careful on her trips to town. Always different excuses, always elaborate stories about the supposed niece who will soon come to pick up her daughter. Deep down, she knows she can't maintain this situation forever. At some point, she will have to make a definitive decision. Formalize Emily's adoption or discover the truth about her origin. The opportunity arises unexpectedly. On one of her rare visits to town, Diana overhears conversations about a wealthy businessman staying at the nearby luxury hotel. An obsessed man, offering fortunes for information about a lost baby. A man named Edward Blackwood. Something about that name, that story, awakens Diana's intuition. It could be a coincidence, but her heart tells her it's not. She decides to investigate, even if it means risking losing Emily. The hotel is an intimidating place for someone like Diana, accustomed to the simplicity of her ranch. She feels out of place in her worn clothes and hands calloused by work, but her determination is greater than her discomfort. At the reception, she asks for Edward Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood is not receiving visitors, madam. Tell him I have information about what he's looking for. The words come out as a whisper, weighted with an almost unbearable burden. Diana doesn't know what she's doing, doesn't know if she's making the biggest mistake of her life. But something drives her, perhaps the same instinct that led Max to find Emily that fateful night. She is led to a luxurious suite, where a man with his back to the door watches the landscape through the window. When he turns, Diana sees a face consumed by suffering, empty eyes that have seen too much, that have cried beyond measure. "You have information about the child?" Diana hesitates. This man's eyes, they are the same as Emily's. The same deep blue, the same shape. There is no doubt, this is the girl's father. "Why are you looking for her?" The question catches Edward by surprise. He expected information, not questions. His eyes narrow, suspicious. "That's none of your business. If you know something, say, and I'll pay well. I don't want your money. I want to know why someone would abandon a helpless baby in the desert, only to search for her desperately later." The words hit Edward like a physical blow. He stumbles, leaning on the nearby table. Diana sees the truth, revealing itself on his face, the guilt, the remorse, the despair. How do you know this?" "I found her. My dog found her. Almost dead, buried in a wooden box." Edward collapses into a chair, defeated. All his controlled posture, all his cold facade crumbles before this simple woman who now holds his fate in her hands. She's okay? She's alive and healthy. More than that, I won't say until I understand what happened. And so begins a conversation that will last for hours. Edward, for the first time since Eleanor's death, opens his heart. He tells about the brief romance with Emily's mother, about how Eleanor hid the pregnancy from him, about how he only found out when he was informed of her death in childbirth. He talks about the grief, the anger, the irrational resentment against the child who, in his disturbed mind, took Eleanor from him. Diana listens without judging but also without forgiving. When Edward finishes his confession, the sun is already setting, painting the room with golden tones that contrast with the darkness of the story she has just heard. "Are you going to turn me into the police?" The question hangs in the air like a heavy cloud. Diana considers her options, thinks of Emily, of Max, of her lonely ranch, of the blue eyes that have already captured her heart. No, not now at least. But there are conditions. The following weeks establish a strange routine. Edward rents a house near Diana's ranch. Every day, under her vigilant supervision, he spends a few hours with Emily. At first, he is awkward, fearful, almost unable to hold his own daughter. But gradually, a connection begins to form. Diana watches, always attentive, always ready to intervene. Max never leaves Emily's side when Edward is present, as if understanding the complexity of the situation. "She smiled at me today," Edward says one afternoon, his voice choked with emotion. "I think she knows who I am." Diana doesn't answer. She saw the smile, saw Emily's tiny hand grasp her father's finger, but she still doesn't trust this man who was capable of abandoning his own daughter. "What would you do if I let you take her?" The question comes out of nowhere, surprising both of them. Edward looks at Diana, then at Emily, who is playing with an improvised rattle on the living room rug. I don't know. I have no idea how to raise a child. My life is in New York, luxury apartments, meetings, travel. Then why are you looking for her so desperately?" Edward runs a hand over his face, a gesture Diana has learned to recognize as a sign of his internal struggle. "Because I need to redeem myself. I need to try to do the right thing at least once in my life." The brutal honesty of the answer disarms Diana. It's not the perfect answer. It's not what a father should say. But it is true, and perhaps it is a start. Time passes. Emily celebrates her first birthday on the small ranch, a modest celebration. Just Diana, Edward, Max, and the retired nurse from town, Mrs. Johnson, who has become Diana's ally and confidant. On that day, something changes between Diana and Edward. A silent truce, a mutual recognition that they both love this child, each in their own way. Diana realizes that Edward is no longer the cold, calculating man who abandoned a baby in the desert. Fatherhood, even late and conflicted, has transformed him. Edward, in turn, sees in Diana not a threat but a partner, someone who saved not only his daughter, but also his lost soul. It is around this time that the dust storms begin. Common phenomena in the New Mexico desert, but particularly intense that year. Diana, accustomed to the idiosyncrasies of the local weather, takes extra precautions. Edward, still learning about rural life, follows her instructions with a humility that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. On a particularly hot afternoon, with the sky taking on that yellowish hue that portends the arrival of a storm, Diana leaves Emily playing in the improvised playpen on the porch, under Max's constant watch. She goes to the barn to get more firewood, anticipating a cold night after the storm passes. Edward is in town, buying supplies. They have developed an almost natural domestic routine, sharing tasks and responsibilities without needing many words. Diana lingers in the barn, organizing tools, checking the emergency generator. When she returns to the house, her blood runs cold. The playpen is empty. Max and Emily have disappeared. For a terrible moment, panic paralyzes her. Her mind immediately goes to the worst-case scenario. Edward took Emily. It was always his plan, to gain trust and then run away with the child. But then she sees the footprints, small marks in the sand that lead beyond the property, towards the desert. Beside Emily's small, unsteady footprints, who is now crawling with determination, are Max's unmistakable paw prints. No, no, no. The child somehow managed to get out of the playpen, and Max, faithful to his mission as protector, followed her instead of alerting Diana. The wind is already blowing hard, raising clouds of dust that make visibility difficult. Diana runs into the house, grabs a flashlight, a canteen of water, a blanket. Time is running out. If the storm arrives in full force, finding Emily will be almost impossible. She is about to leave when she hears Edward's car arriving. He gets out of the vehicle loaded with bags but stops immediately when he sees Diana's face. What happened? Emily, she got out of the playpen. She went into the desert with Max. No more words are needed. Edward drops the bags and runs to the car. Let's go, the storm is coming. Diana hesitates for only a second before getting into the vehicle. Her distrust of Edward still exists, but now it is overcome by the urgency of the situation. They need to find Emily before the relentless nature of the desert claims her. The car moves through the arid landscape, following the small footprints that the wind quickly erases. Diana feels despair growing within her. Edward drives with fierce concentration, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, exactly as they were on that fateful night over a year ago, when he made the worst decision of his life. There, Diana suddenly shouts, pointing to a rock formation. In the distance, Edward strains his eyes. For a moment he sees nothing, but then a flash of gold among the rocks catches his attention. It's Max, his coat standing out against the rocky backdrop. They abandon the car and run to the rocks. The storm is almost upon them now, visibility decreasing with every second. Diana calls for Emily, her voice almost lost in the rising howl of the wind. Max barks in response, guiding them to a small natural cave among the rocks. And there, protected from the wind and sand, is Emily, sitting quietly playing with small stones, completely oblivious to the danger she is in. Diana runs to the child, taking her in her arms, tears of relief streaming down her face. Edward stays behind, as if afraid to break the sacred moment between the two. But then, Emily reaches out her arms to him, babbling something that sounds vaguely like, "Papa." Edward freezes, unable to react, until Diana, with a muffled sob, hands the child to him. It is a moment of surrender, of acceptance. Diana finally understands that despite everything, this man loves his daughter. And Edward understands that Diana, despite every right she would have to hate him, chose compassion. But there is no time for reflection. The storm is upon them now, violent and merciless. Returning to the car is impossible. They need to shelter the cave until nature's fury subsides. Hours pass. In the darkness of the cave, lit only by Diana's flashlight, they form an unlikely picture: a rancher, a millionaire, a baby, and a German shepherd, united by circumstances, by fear, by the love for a small life that was almost lost twice. "Why didn't you report me?" Edward asks, his voice almost a whisper. After everything I did. Diana looks at Emily, now asleep in her father's arms. Max is lying beside them, vigilant even in shelter. Because I believe in second chances. Because I saw how you changed. Because, she hesitates, searching for the right words. Because Emily deserves to know her father, the man you've become, not the one who abandoned her. Edward lowers his head, silent tears running down his face. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve to be her father. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what she deserves. And she deserves a complete family. People who love her, who protect her. The storm finally abates in the early morning. They emerge from the cave into a transformed world. The landscape has been redrawn by the wind and sand. New contours, new textures, like their own lives. The journey back to the ranch is silent, each immersed in their thoughts. Diana looks out the car window, watching the sunrise paint the sky, pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning. In the months that follow, they establish an unusual arrangement. Edward buys a property neighboring Diana's. It's not large or luxurious like his apartments in New York or his mansions in Europe. It's a simple house, suitable for life in the desert, close enough for Emily to grow up between two homes that, in different ways, love her equally. Diana retains legal guardianship of Emily, a decision Edward accepts with humility. He knows he has no right to demand more, but he is present every day, learning to be a father, learning to be a better person. On a quiet afternoon, while watching Emily take her first steps in the garden, closely followed by the ever-vigilant Max, Diana asks the question she has kept for so long. Have you ever thought about what it would have been like if you hadn't changed your mind that night? If you hadn't gone back to look for her? Edward watches his daughter, her golden curls shining under the desert sun, her eyes, Eleanor's eyes, full of curiosity and joy. I think about it every day. And every day I thank Max for finding her, you for saving her, for saving me too. Diana doesn't answer immediately. There are truths that don't need to be spoken aloud, understandings that transcend words. People can change, she finally says. I changed, you changed. The desert changes too, constantly reshaped by the wind and sand. Nothing stays the same forever. Edward smiles, a genuine smile that reaches his eyes. Except love. Love stays. Emily walks towards them, wobbly but determined, with Max following her every step. She holds out her arms, a universal gesture of someone who wants to be picked up, hugged, loved. Edward picks her up, and then, in a movement that surprises them both, extends his other arm to Diana. For a moment she hesitates. Then, with a sigh that seems to release years of solitude, she moves closer. The three embrace, with Max circling around, barking happily, as if approving of this improbable family forged in the fire of trials, tempered by the desert winds. And so, under the infinite New Mexico sky, in a land that seems hostile but harbors life in its most resilient forms, a new journey begins. It is not the end of the story, but merely the beginning of a different chapter, written no longer by pain and regret, but by hope and redemption. On the horizon, storm clouds form again. The desert is never truly at peace, never stays the same. But now they will face whatever comes together, united by bonds stronger than blood, more enduring than guilt, as eternal as the desert itself. Because some stories don't end. They just transform, like grains of sand moved by the wind, forming new patterns, new landscapes, new possibilities. And in every grain of sand, in every breath of wind, in every heartbeat, is the silent promise that, even in the most improbable circumstances, love finds a way. Redemption is possible, and hope, like little Emily, is never truly lost, just waiting to be found. The sun sets once again over the New Mexico desert. On the porch of the small ranch, three silhouettes are outlined against the flaming sky. A woman whose loneliness found purpose, a man whose darkness found light, and a child whose almost tragic fate transformed into a story of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Beside them, always vigilant, always faithful, is Max, the German shepherd who, following only his instinct, changed the course of so many lives. The wind whispers ancient secrets among the cacti and rocks. The sand keeps the tracks of those who passed by but will soon erase them as it always does. The desert does not judge, does not condemn, does not absolve. It simply exists, relentless and majestic, a silent witness to the small and great human tragedies, the defeats and triumphs, the falls and redemptions. And in the silence of the approaching night, when the stars begin to dot the sky like diamonds, scattered on black velvet, a simple truth remains. Even in the most inhospitable places, even in the hardest hearts, life finds a way. Hope persists. And love, when true, transcends even the most unforgivable mistakes, transforming deserts into gardens, strangers into family, and regret into redemption.